Da 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 da! What's my good dear? Welcome, welcome, everybody. I am literally talked out, and that is something that is very rare for me. If you guys have hung out with me for any length of time, you know I can be a yapper, but sometimes it's important also to be a listener. And I don't know if I was a true listener because, well, let's start in the beginning. Hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside as we're giving YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Just tell you a little bit about my day. I have been in my contemplation, in my thoughts, in this little bit of movement that I want to make for myself. I'm kind of feeling out the air. I'm feeling out the possibilities. I have what I would like and how I would like to see things played out in my life. But I also know that it is in that partnership with myself and also in the receivership of the right advice, the right mentorship, the right conversation. And, in the topics that I kind of dwell in, there's not a lot of people in my neighborhood that I can actually have these important and deep conversations about. And it's not religious, it's not spirituality, though in essence it is, right? Because that's me. This is my life. And well, I invited my nephew over for dinner. I made Chinese food, and we really enjoy each other's company in the way that we get to have these kind of conversations. And I'm not going to say I've never had these conversations before, because if I ever bump into people and they are living out an experience for themselves, I want in. I want to know. I want to experience and see that experience through somebody else's eyes and somebody else's experience, if that makes any sense. And to enjoy just sitting and being able to talk as the person that I am with some of my silly ideas. And in all honesty, in that empathic way that I am, knowing that my self worth is dictated by what other people think of me, I am very sensitive as to what my nephew thinks of me, of his Aunt Cindy. I don't allow my nieces and nephews to call me aunt or auntie, right? I just don't have that emotional relationship to children, that I don't have that sense of age about me. I feel I'm a little bit ageless. And, it is that one of a few gifts that I have, that I am relatable to all different ages. And it's something I've always known about myself. But the reason I'm able to do that is because I don't have that staring me in the face, right? I don't have the kids. I don't have the grandkids. You know, I don't have elderly parents in these things that remind us to keep us in mind, to remind us how old we are. I can look in the mirror, but just like everybody else, I see what I want to see, right? And maybe it's not like, what was that movie? It was an old black and white movie in the 30s, The Enchanted Cottage. Now, the guy was from Marcus Welby, MD, if you guys remember that television show. He was the elderly doctor in that show. But he did a movie, Roberts, something Roberts. Anyway, he did a movie called The Enchanted Forest, where he was an Air Force pilot, and he got into a fire crash and he was disfigured, right? And he moved into the cottage and he was very badly disfigured. And his attitude matched the way he looked, right? He really was a miserable Scrooge, if you want to put it that way. He hired himself a maid. This woman was a maid because, well, she didn't think highly of herself, limiting beliefs, possibly projections on her. Who knows what it is? But she felt herself to be a very plain Jane, and she was reminded constantly during her life how unattractive she was. And she moved into this cottage with this gentleman with the disfigurement, um, as a job opportunity, as a housekeeper. And it was in that relationship and over the time they actually looked at each other as beauties, as wonders of nature, as something actually super beautiful. And they fell in love. I don't know why I'm telling this story. It's pertinent somehow. But it's it's in recognizing what's truly on the inside of somebody. And my father and my grandmother used to say to me all the time, Cindy, it's what's inside that counts, right? And I believed that as a child and as a teenager. I desperately needed to believe that because I didn't feel good about what was going on outside. I hope I'm not going off down some side branch here. But in growing up and making some choices and doing better by myself and somehow blooming in a way, I lost it again, but I bloomed for a while. And in that blooming, I got to recognize what's on the outside does matter. Because before I had lost that, what was that, 160 pounds, nobody ever gave me the time of day, right? I was invisible and yet unvisible. Uh, I was visible as a target, but invisible in the person that I had become. Because again, right, my expectations of the person that I was came directly from what other people thought of me. There we go, right back down to the main branch there. And in those sensitivities, um, I sometimes feel I don't show up as strongly as I could or as I think I should. And in not having those people around me to have these discussions to mirror back some of these ideas about myself, I don't get a good indicator, just like I don't get a good indicator that I'm old, right? Because I don't have children, I don't have that relationship in anything and looking except looking in the mirror. And like I said, we all see what we want to see when we look into the mirror. I recognize I'm 63 years old. I know how old I am, but I don't feel it. I don't feel it physically, I don't feel it mentally, and I don't feel it emotionally. So sometimes in that relations to other people, and back to the main branch again, it's getting clearer. I knew it was going to all tie up, right? But sometimes, uh, I got all excited there and instantly lost it. And that's what happens to me, but it's right back here again. Sometimes I don't recognize that I am a different age than other people. So my nephew came over for dinner today, and like I said, I don't get to have these insightful conversations, these intellectual. He is so much more. on the intellect, on the knowing side than I am, right? And it was amazing that I felt I was keeping up in the conversation with him. And I also felt that respect that he was holding himself at a level for me, that he was purposely bringing himself down to a level with me so that I could better understand the conversations. And I enjoyed it immensely, right? But it still didn't make me feel, right, super duper that, that there are people out there so smart, like so smart, right? And then there's Cindy, right? I grab a cup of coffee and I come in and I sit, and in conversation my hopes are, in my optimism, is that in the surfacing of topics, that they're reachable to the audience, that they're touchable, that they're understandable, right? Because I recognize, right? He said to me, Cindy, right? You know your stuff, right? But you're so comfortable in what you're doing in a shaman kind of style that you're so comfortable. You grab your cup of coffee, you go in and you have your conversations, and the lessons kind of pop up in the conversations and stuff. And I didn't notice that anybody recognized that that's what I did. And I do that specifically, right? And in the next statement, I was all happy that somebody noticed and everything. And then the next sentence, he just kind of crushed me. I just felt crushed. Yeah, he says, that's psychology. It's the lowest of the lows. Right? And I went, what? Right? Like I'm the bottom of the pool. I'm the grunge on the bottom. It's the bottom. And he said, no. And right. And then I felt a little bit better because I could get that he was trying to explain to me. He says that that's the beginning, that's the entry level, right? And right away I went, oh my goodness, but that's where I want to be, right? That's where I could do the most service because that's where I was, right? And it's in my experience and in the evidence that it could be done that maybe somebody else might catch on to that and give it a shot themselves, right? I was pretty amazed, right? Because again, the same moment that he crushed me, again, he gave me a very useful insight into myself. And then he said, we talked about my brand and my channel a little bit. Again, I don't have people in my life that I can have these conversations, and I should. He told me I should, right? And I'm thinking, well, how? It's you right, like mentors are expensive, right? Coaches are expensive. And and a lot of these programs are, well, they're in line with what I want to do, but they're entrepreneurs, right? And of course, they give, right? That's the whole idea, to give more than you get, and understanding you get what you give, right? But they still got to put roof over their heads too. Not everybody can be a charity case, and right? I get that. And I'm not in that disrespectful way calling them cherry cases, but only in that reference that some people pay and some people don't, right? So I come in here and I do live every single night, understanding that that could be me. That might have been me. That could have been me. And if that's me out there sitting in a conversation with Cindy, what would I want? And what would I need? Well, I would want somebody to be kind. I would want somebody not to trigger me. Ooh, but we're doing work. We're doing shadow work. We're going in and we're finding out where the problems are. We're untangling kinks and untangling wires, and we're better getting along with ourselves in order to better get along with others. That's toughy stuff, right? But if you're willing, and this is the idea, because this is how I came in, right? Because I was willing to try anything, right? I was saving my brand. And look at me, 10-year anniversary this year. I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary. And this channel that it should have petered out years ago, in all truth. But in my trust that this was something that I was meant to be doing, I just followed the breadcrumbs. I followed my intuition when I didn't understand even that that was what I was supposed to be doing, in following my intuition, those serendipities, those breadcrumbs, right? But that's what I thought they were, just chances, right? Good intuition, thinking everybody had good intuition, not understanding that, right? People just didn't have my intuition. My intuition was specifically programmed for me. And I earned those badges. And like I said, I'm going to use those badges. But pull it back to the main branch, Cindy, right? It was my nephew that helped me to recognize something in me that, you got to start where you're at. You really are. And I didn't recognize, because he had said that I was on the bottom. Psychology, working in emotions, it's fairly new in some of the topics that I kind of run with. And I didn't recognize that. I'm coming in and I'm just going to work. That's all I'm doing. I'm just following my intuition and I'm picking up the lessons along the way. But supposedly these are not old, ancient lessons. Psychology is fairly fairly new when you look at other, I don't know what you call them, ideas. I'll just call them other ideas, other possibility in resolution and feeling out and feeling a little bit better as to what's going on. And I've been doing that since right, for at least a half a dozen years. And it has served me well. I mean, I'm still here, like I said, 10 years later, and my brand is still here. Boy, does it look different. But you know what? I look different and I am different. And I will continue to be different. But I'm at a state now, 63 years old, right? Change is always going to be in my life. I've caught it. I've been into it. I've got a taste for what I am doing. And I see in the evidence of my own life that it does work. But again, like my nephew said, it's at the bottom there. It's psychology, understanding emotions. It's fairly new. But I'm not new. I believe, parts of me have been around for a very long time in our everyday, day to day, right? There have been problems in relationships and in existence, in survival, going back thousands and thousands of years. And again, right? That's it's back there. I wouldn't be here right now, right? And I think we got caught up in that. somewheres along the line, and we just got deeper and deeper and deeper. And, um, I didn't start this work. My father was into it. I believe my grandmother on my father's side was also into it, but who's to say? That is the past. And I am not going to put, what's the word, make something that might be not true a truth, even if there's some feeling and some pull towards that, because, right, we are still human and our emotions pull us to what we want to be true, or pull us away from what we wish not to be true, that we just can't believe, right? That we're afraid to face. And, my nephew paid me that compliment tonight in saying, you know your stuff, Cindy. You're at the bottom, but it's not you're at the bottom. But that's what you're dredging. You're dredging the bottom. Why? I'm dredging the bottom because that's where I was. And I was able to get hooked. I was able to be hauled to the surface. I was able to get a gasp of air. And yes, I had to go down numerous, numerous, numerous times, back down, and failed so many times my attempts and so many pivots. But I'm 63 years old now, right? And my nephew's recognition that maybe I do got this, right? Layman's is pretty good. Layman's is a place where I can be nice and comfortable. I'm taking in the lessons, right? I'm getting the job done. I'm getting the tools around the belt. But in layman's, I make myself better understood. And because I'm speaking not just to the human in me and not just the human in you, but those other parts of me who's speaking to those other parts of you. And I have no idea, right? And in this moment, it's not necessary for me except what I can feel into, right? And pick up on my own in my hypervigilance and in my capacity to sit and listen to somebody else have a say and just giving a perspective, or maybe the perspective isn't asked for. Maybe that's not my place. Maybe I'm just listening, right? But at that point, if I am asked for an opinion, then at the very least, I know that I was listening and I could give something honest in the understanding of what I picked up. Excuse me. So it was nice. He says, Cindy, you should go the shaman route, right? Sit there with your cup of coffee, all casual like, having conversations, and then just throwing out I called it the nuggets the other day, just throwing out those little nuggets here and there, because the ones those nuggets are meant for quite often are human beings, human souls that have gotten the prerequisites in those lessons already. But sometimes all we need is just somewhere's comfortable to sit and then just wait for that other part of me that surfaces, right? And then Cindy has to go up for a breath. And when I do that, they'll storm right in and they're doing their thing too. And it could just be one insight, right? And that insight might come from Cindy, even in the experiences that I've had in my own life, right? And that's the way it actually should be. That's why we're given the experiences that we have. That's why they imprint as a memory so strongly, right? And yeah, so I thought it was very kind. We had American Chinese food today. It was pretty good. I made noodles and fried rice, and I made pork tidbits, and I made chicken balls, and yeah, it was pretty good. Sweet and sour sauce, and we sat and we talked for hours. And so I come in tonight. I'm surprised I have that energy, but that is the residue, right? That's the magic. And um, that might have zapped me pretty good, but I'm feeling pretty decent in the moment. And he is my nephew, but again, that doesn't mean anything, right? But that feeling of rubbing each other well, right? How we sometimes get these feelings that we're just kind of like sandpaper up against people. That's what you move away from, right? That's the agitation. That's the one that will keep you in the negative so that you can't pick up the positive along the way. But if you get a couple of positives together, oh my goodness, the creativity and the ideas. So we'll see what comes of that. Seriously, food food for thought. I love it, and I love that I was able to have that conversation today. Again, it wasn't part of the plan. It just kind of worked out that way. And we'll see how I feel tomorrow. And, maybe there's that possibility that maybe we can go for walks or go for coffee or right there. I'm not sure or if there are commonalities outside of the conversations that we have, but we are our family, right? And it's really nice to have somebody in the family, right? Kind of making some movement alongside me, because sometimes that's all we need is just to walk the path together for a little while. It doesn't mean it has to be forever. Sometimes it is, right? But that's all going to be in our choices along the way, right? So yeah, beneficial day. There's no leftovers. We cleaned it all up. That's how good it was. And a couple of dishes. But you know what? It's getting late tonight, so I think I might even leave that for tomorrow. A little eye scrunch there because I know, being that procrastinator, I'll probably finish up a few dishes before I go to bed. Okay, you guys, I'm going to grab a card here. Just a couple of minutes in perspective. I hope everybody is having an amazing week. We're going into hump day. Are we going into hump day? And yeah, I think that in the energy of spring, in new beginnings, that it should be a priority to find what we rub up well against, right? To maybe pull ourselves away from what doesn't feel good when we're around it. You know it, right? You know it when you're in it, the agitation, the frustration, the arguments, right? Sometimes it's not until you go home and you just feeling this aggravation or angry or despair or hopelessness or grief, and you can trace back a little bit as to where it comes from. And if you do that, sometimes you'll realize it doesn't belong to you. It's just something somebody didn't even ask you to hold, but you're holding it anyway, right? Okay, you guys. Let's pick a card. 2 minutes. And I guess it's going to be this one because it's right on the top here. We got this word commitment. We touched on this one today, you guys, in this conversation with my nephew. He knows I am rock solid when it comes to my brand. This is built into my life. It may not be every single day, somewheres down the road. It may change. I may go into copywriting, right? I may go into the writing. I've been thinking to write a book. I've got, right, my story, my idea in my head, always playing out in those moments that I'm easily drifting off in boredom, right? That if I'm going to drift off anyway, well, let's get working on the book, right? And, you know, in this casual manner that I show up in, uh, part of that gratefulness of having my nephew recognize that in me it's because it's the intent, and it was intended to be recognized. And I didn't say anything to him, and yet he picked it up and he recognized it right away. The fact that I want to be comfortable, I want to be casual, I do not want to be on point, right? I don't, right? I sometimes do those notes and I can go off the notes, but when I do the point list, I feel like I'm trying to be somebody that I'm not, right? And that's the truth. The school teacher, the intellectual, and I'm very casual in the way that I present myself, no matter what. I am grateful I've had those jobs that have allowed me to do that, but I've only been allowed to do that, right? Because it's beneficial to the companies that I work for, right? But it's in that commitment to myself, in that feeling out of the people that I put myself in. It's not, I could say it's not hypervigilance. I cannot, right? I can't say that for sure. I can't say that it's not a controlling aspect of myself, because those other parts of me are being overprotective in that way. I can't guarantee that in 100%, but I don't feel it, right? And because I move in my feelings, right? I have to go that way. Okay. So it said here, commitment is the choice that has to happen. This is how I get things that I have to get done, is I commit to it, because I refuse to break a promise to myself. I've broken promises to others unintentionally, but I try very hard not to break those promises to myself. And I never give up. Never give up. This brand moves forward, and like I said, it's going to look different. My intent at some point that it will be that comfy place where you could recognize that I might be that person that you may be able to trust in understanding a little bit better, right? That, even though I speak in a layman's terms, that I am casual, that I'm just sitting here with a cup of coffee, having a chit chat, that people will recognize, right? When I'm talking to you, or those other parts of me are talking to you, and if it can be trusted. But if I'm all fancy dancy, if I'm all on point, if I'm all scheduled and, I was going to say programmed, but it's not programmed, it's practiced in the lesson, then it's not going to come off the same way, right? Not by me at the very least, because people recognize the genuineness is settled in my genuineness, and it's recognizable. If I were to try to be something else, that it would probably not work for me, right? My commitment is to my brand, right? Is the choice that has to happen. This is my brand. It has to happen. I'm going to be 80 years old, right? No, I'm going to say I'm going to be 100 years old, laying in my bed, doing live YouTube shows, doing my podcast, and building and still building relationships, right? On those relationships that a lot of them I have right now. Hello, Eugene. I'm doing very good tonight. I'm doing very good. I'm up a little bit late, but I have another 40 minutes before I'm going to call it a night. I got a lot accomplished today, things that needed to be done, some things that didn't need to be done, but things that would give me a little bit of relaxation a little bit later, a little bit of relief that I don't have things piling up, that I'm taking care of things as they're needing to be taken care of, which means I'll probably have to do the dishes before I go to bed. I won't be doing those in the morning. We'll see. Play it out the way it's meant to be played out. Okay, you guys, it was just supposed to be a couple of minutes, but that commitment to yourself, what can you do to commit to yourself, right? Something that has to happen, right? And then just take the first step immediately, right away, right? Not we'll get started tomorrow. I've got to do some planning. What's the one thing you can do right now? Is there a phone call you can make, right? Is there a presentation? Is there a topic that you could do in going live? Can you share that with somebody? What can you do to get that ball rolling? Right? Write a check. Does anybody write a check anymore? This digital age is pretty amazing, right? I was actually reading an article because I wanted to know what the difference was between the digital age and the artificial intelligence age. And it turned out that AI is actually only a subcategory. It's only a subcategory of the digital age. So that was pretty awesome to learn that, because I would have might have considered that it was the opposite way around, which wasn't the case. So I found it to be really interesting. I'm not a walking dictionary or anything, right? But these little tidbits that come across my path that I find so interesting. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. See you tomorrow.